Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over a bit of an overview of all the changes and new features in version 4.0 of Gems of War. Obviously a pretty big update. The main two things that we ended up getting was quite a few reworks as far as troops, as well as the map, as well as the new Underworld, which brings in factions and delving. So as you can see, new map. Let's go now into just a bunch of troops real quick, and then we'll go over to the Underworld. So, things that changed. One of the most noteworthy things is explosions now only do 50% mana accumulation instead of 70%. This, of course, nerfs every single thing in the entire game that has explosions, though most of them are still viable, simply because they get so much cascaded mana from their explosions that it's normally fine, and you're getting most of the mana from the actual cascades anyways than from the actual explosion. They could nerf it probably to 0%. It would still be somewhat decent, but yeah, 50%, I've barely noticed any difference with any of the troops with that change, so all of them are still pretty viable for the most part, other than the ones that are already towards the weaker side. But first up, Borealis actually could be worth using now. It ends up getting 65% score reduction instead of just having a 2 HP gain to all dragons, so that makes it very tanky. This is really noteworthy on this particular troop because it is normally used in first slot due to the fact that it has triple skull damage versus freezing. It does have the capability to easily freeze, so there could be some viability for this troop, particularly when the new hero class is going to be coming in next later this month gets introduced to the game. It could actually be used with Borealis for pretty decent synergy. 80 also got a really gigantic buff. Her mana cost was reduced from 25 down to 20. She's normally used for Blue Guild War Day, though now could even be used in Delves due to how easy it'll be to actually get summons off her. She has a really good summon. She has a 100% chance to summon Queen Mab every single time. She's also generally used as an anti-third slot. Most teams that get built in this game, third slot generally is the safest spot where you can ever put a troop, though she can just drag that all the way to first slot and make it a lot easier, though more often than not she is used for a perpetual blue storm, and that's the main component that you really use her for. Due to the nerf to explosions, Worldbreaker actually got 2 buffs, no change to his ability, but it's now 2 lower mana costs, meaning he's no longer tied at the highest mana cost in the game, down from 32 down to 30, which makes it a little bit easier, though do keep in mind he is getting 20% less mana from his 18 explosions, so that kind of balances that out. And he also ends up gaining 5 to a random skill instead of 4 every single extra turn, which helps out quite a bit. Speaking about extra bonuses off of extra turn, Behemoth now gains 10 EXP, or 10 HP every single time it ends up getting a extra turn, which will help it out to make sure it doesn't die, which definitely makes it pretty viable. 10 HP per extra turn makes it essentially the tankiest HP related troop in the game, though overall you do get more HP off a grapple pot, which can do 20 to your entire team per extra turn, so do keep that in mind. Other than that, there were some smaller reworks. Scorpius no longer has a limit on how many times it can cast, so you can cast one single Scorpius an infinite amount of times. This will only really be relevant if you can get 4 poisons onto the enemy team, but now it is viable to just double cast Scorpius and win out the entire battle that way, which is kind of cool now, since you can use that for brown synergy with pure browns. Salvini Mora got slightly higher damage by, I believe, 2. It also ended up getting its bond replaced with a chance to summon Dragonette, which isn't much of a change, but still could make it a little bit better than what it was before. Celestacia now has a 9 gem spawn. This is still lower than the 10 it used to have, but it's higher than the 8 that it originally had prior to this update, so that's a little bit better. I really wish they would just raise it back to its normal 10 so that it could actually be usable again, but at 9 at least it's gonna miss slightly less often, though still pretty much useless for the most part. Other than that, Soul Zara, if you need it as a early to mid game soul farmer, has gotten a little bit of a buff. It now has more magic every single time it ends up killing an enemy. This isn't going to make too big a difference, but it did end up getting a little bit more, so every single time you end up getting that kill, that's basically 15 additional damage, assuming they have the highest HP, so that's a little bit of a nice little buff to it. So that's basically all of the troop related things and rebalance. As far as the main feature though, that is the Underworld. So if we go click this, you do need to make sure to unlock the Underworld if you haven't already. Make sure to complete out the Cinder Mirage questline. It is mandatory to complete out the Cinder Mirage questline. You can do that as early as level 30, or at least start it, and then that unlocks the Underworld. Underworld is the main new feature that ended up coming into the game. So you'll see 2 factions currently. We're going to be getting about another new one every single month, but which one is the better one to do? As you can kind of see by the numbers that we have underneath them, that would be the Hall of Guardians. There are several reasons why you should only be doing the Hall of Guardians, and there's only one exception to this. If you're a newer player, it might be okay to go do All-Seeing Eye because the troops count as Darkstone. So if you don't currently have a 5-star Darkstone, you might want to consider doing Darkstone. But as far as all the reasons why Hall of Guardians is better, it is literally everything. It has easier enemies compared to the other faction. This faction has better troops, which as a newer player it's good because you'll be getting a better team from actually doing this place. But as far as actually completing it, it is way, way harder. It has a attack steal, so you won't be able to use as much, you won't really be able to use skull spam against it. It has something that automatically hits the weakest enemy, so you can't be safe against the dumb AI because it's going to automatically work past that by automatically hitting your weakest. And it has skull spam, which if it ends up aligning, you are instantly dead if it ends up getting that due to the stat discrepancy within delving. So yeah. Definitely a lot harder that way. It has a 0.2 times multiplier higher, the Hall of Guardians, for whatever reason. Just because of the different rooms that it just overall has a slightly higher multiplier, which means slightly higher rewards overall. It counts as White Helm, so it is now possible to get 10-star, 11-star, and 12-star White Helm, whereas Darkstone is stuck at level 8 due to not having a hero class. It's blocking it from being able to go any higher. It has a better dungeon layout. All you have to do is just go into the first room, and then you can go to literally any of the other rooms, so it's a lot easier to end it at any time, as well as take the battles that you really want to focus on, whereas the other dungeon, it has a really weird three-way format that's really hard to navigate through, and just isn't as good. Other than that, it has no Tier 5 battles. Tier 5 battles are basically how these work, is there's Tier 1 all the way to Tier 6 battles. Tier 1 is 50% and just counts as common. Tier 2 is 60% and keeps going up and up. And the Tier 5, which is the legendary, has 90% of the stats, which is a relatively hard battle, also ends up giving a pretty strong effect on most of them. And these are pretty avoidable, or something that can be quite hard. It can be basically as hard as the final battle of the delve itself, sometimes even harder due to having things like Bone Drag and other various skull spam that can just kill you out of nowhere. So this faction has no Tier 5, so you don't have to do that really hard battle that the All-Seeing Eye has, which basically has 2 final battles instead of 1. So Hall of Guardians definitely better in that effect. And also it has no Tier 1 battles. You might think that Tier 1 battles are actually really easy, but that is not the case. There is one particular Tier 1 battle that is stronger than literally any other battle pretty much, other than things that have skull spam on it, or Devour, and other instant kills. But that is the Dust Devil. Tier 1's the only thing that ever gets a Dust Devil battle as of currently, and the way that factions work, or delves work, is during a delve, you cannot reorder your team. Whenever anything dies, it doesn't come back, and whenever it gets reordered, it stays in that order. And with Dust Devils, you need to make sure they cast 4 times, otherwise, whatever team position you end up getting put into, you will not actually be able to undo unless you specifically have something on your team that could specifically move every single individual troop on your team, which basically doesn't even exist. Maybe there will in the future, but there is no viable way to really reorder your team once it gets disoriented, and Dust Devils effect will last for the entirety of the delve. So got to be very, very careful when you're up against Dust Devils. Either have to let it cast 4 times and then kill it, or you just have to avoid the battle entirely. And with the Hall of Guardians, well, you get to avoid the battle entirely because there is no Tier 1 fight. Or I shouldn't say that. Technically the first one is, but the first one's always the faction-related troops. Anyways, all these are the same. It has this normal quest line that every single quest has, just really short. Portals we end up using to end up getting either treasures or specific troops from the factions. These shards, we get basically everything related from delves, and you can use this in any. So we can go get a bunch of resources from this faction, and then go use it in the other faction when we finally want to decide to go do the other faction. So all the treasure and everything do switch over. It's just a specific portal that you're triggering on will mainly just determine the specific faction troops that you're getting. That's the main difference. As far as the Horde, this is where you go and put all of your treasure, try and upgrading your quality. As you do more of them in combination, you'll have a higher chance, or you can get super unlucky like we've been so far, and we're still stuck at level 1. Every single time, regardless though, you always get a little bit of extra levels. Levels end up increasing the amount of stats that you'll end up having, and will help a lot because there is quite a bit of a stat discrepancy as you start reaching the later ones, particularly when you start using the pure faction team. And as far as quality, the main reason you want to get this up, and you really want to rush this up to plus 10 in one single faction, pretty much all of your treasure should be going to one faction, and this one would be the better one for now. But you mainly want to do it because it keeps getting these higher delve chests. These delve chests have a cap of 10, but generally, as you get these up, it'll make it easier and easier to get just higher standards for every single delve you do. And at minimum, you'll end up getting a plus 5, assuming you can complete out a delve, even if you get the worst of luck once you finally complete all the way to a level 10 quality. And basically, the way of upgrading is concerned, you should pretty much just go faction by faction, going quality 10 by quality 10. Get a single faction to quality 10, then stay there until you have enough resources to get the next faction to quality 10, and you basically keep repeating this process until you have literally every faction at quality 10. Do keep in mind, you want to make sure every faction is quality 10 as well as level 100. Generally, you're going to reach level 100 before you reach quality 10 in most instances, unless you get really lucky, but do keep in mind, you don't gain much extra value after level 100. It starts costing a lot of gold, because it does cost gold to actually put these in, and the higher the level goes, the more gold it will require to actually upgrade these. So it is a bit of a gold sink. It can take anywhere from like 100,000 to a few million to really be able to reach the level 100 quality, or the level 100 treasure hoard, as well as level 10 quality. So do keep that in mind. But anyways, that's that. Only other thing is faction renown. This we end up getting as we go do certain objectives within each individual faction, as well as a total throughout all of the factions. Of course, both mine are the exact same, because I haven't done any battles in any other faction yet, because you should only really be focusing one, ideally the Hall of Guardians. But as far as the things you need to do, there are 4 different categories in which you can get points for, and they cap out at the 500th battle, 500th battle, 500th battle, and level 100 horde is where all of those end up capping out at. But as far as this one, beat the best defeated delve. This goes, again, as I mentioned, up to 500, counts for twice the amount of points. So if you reach the level 100, it counts as 200 points, so on and so forth. You can see just double the amount. So this is where you gain a good number of yours. This is just from simply going deeper and deeper into the higher levels if you can complete it out. If you are a newer player, you might have to stick to the lower ones, or you might have to go and just rush down the middle of the route. You can do it as minimal as 3 battles to complete out the delve. And if you're struggling on a current level, but you still want to keep getting more renown, it might just be a good idea to just go as directly as you can to the final boss, and then just kill it out and go that way. But other than that, you also get it for best delve with no casualties. Keep in mind, you can resummon if you want, in order to keep getting troops to still have 4, but if you die a single time, even if you finish with 4 after having resummoned, it still counts as you dying. So you need to make sure you have your original team without any resummons, without none of them ever dying, to still get this to count. Having 4 with a resummon, unlike Guild Wars, does not actually count as no casualties. It has to literally be nothing dying. Other than that, you have to finish out the best delve without, or using the pure faction team. This is actually the hardest out of all 4 of these to end up doing, mainly because you need to make sure you have a good amount of the faction troops, as well as have them upgraded enough to actually be able to function. What's nice is all of the faction troops do have synergy with each other, though it is a lot weaker than using a legitimate team, so it can be quite a bit harder. And if you don't have the right troops, or if you don't have them upgraded enough, or you don't have enough treasure hoard to have enough stats to be able to complete it, it can be somewhat difficult. Though keep in mind, you can just do it at any point. Like right now, you can see we've only done it up to level 40, but if we were to go later and go do it for level 100, once we go do our 3rd delve later, we would then be able to go and get this immediately to level 100. So it doesn't really matter when we go and get it out. We just need to get it out eventually, so we get that faction renown. As far as faction renown, what it does, every single faction can go up to 2,500 specifically, and each faction will end up giving these rewards: a lot of legendary ingots, a lot of mythic ingots. Specifically at 1,900, it gives 15 mythic ingots, which is like, what, 1/4 a mythic weapon or somewhere around there. So really good in that. We end up getting shards every single 10 as well, so that ends up stacking up those. And every single faction has its own pet, which of course gives the faction bonus for the pet, or for the, it gives a pet bonus for the team of the faction itself. So whenever you use 4 times with the faction, or 3 times, I believe even 2 times, it ends up giving you a small bonus, and this just makes that bonus even larger, which will help with the stat discrepancy that ends up occurring within this game mode. And there's also a global one throughout every single faction you have, and you'll end up getting higher gold income, you'll end up getting more random ingots per day, you'll end up getting higher stats. I believe the first one obviously is life, then at 8,000 I believe it's armor, and then it just keeps going from there. Currently the highest this can be at this given moment in time is 5,000, but as I mentioned earlier, they will be adding a new faction approximately every single month. There's 2 ways that they'll actually be able to be adding them. One of them will be a weekly Tuesday thing, where we'll be having already existing factions, having a faction event where you can throw gems as well as just doing normal battles in order to go get more treasures, as well as other various things like the normal tier rewards. It's basically like any other sigil system, like bounty hunter raids, all that stuff. Pretty similar in that regard, just related to factions specifically, and these are every Tuesday, or I believe every Tuesday. Most Tuesdays will have them, and occasionally there'll be a Friday event, just a standard Fridays that last from Friday until Monday reset, where it lasts for 3 days basically, and that will bring in a new faction whenever those occur. And as I mentioned, those will occur about every 4 to 5 to 6 weeks or so. Anyways, let's actually go and show a delve, which is the main new thing that ends up really coming into this patch, is these 3 daily delves that you can do. Do keep in mind that you can use a delay system to delay these. What I mean by this is, let's say you do not have enough time on a given day, or you just want to go get more stuff upgraded and stuff to go do delves. You can actually delay your delves by using one of them on a specific faction. So let's say currently there's 2 factions. Let's say we go and use, we currently have 3. We can go and use 2 of these immediately by setting a faction start, or the delve start. We just go and start this delve, we can go start that delve, and now if we, both of those delves will go and count. So for example, if I click this, you'll notice immediately that we now have only 2 delves left. But this delve specifically right here, we can hold this for as long as we want. We can hold this for a day, we could hold it for a week, we could hold it literally there forever if we want to, and we can go do it at a later day. So once more factions come in, you can completely just skip certain days if you want to, simply by allocating each one of these scrolls to a certain delve, starting it. You don't even need to pick your team anything. You literally just click that button, it takes like a few seconds, and then you can delay it by a day. So now we have 2. If we want, we could go just do those other 2 in the other delve and then just have it delayed into the other day. This isn't a strategy you'll need to use too much, but as a newer player, when you're constantly gaining higher stats and everything, it'll be pretty useful. Also, once more factions come and you just don't have enough time on a given day to really do delves, you'll be able to do this to basically go and delay it towards the following day, or possibly even multiple days once we have like 6, 9, 12, and so forth amount of delves. Currently, that's not too possible to do, but it is a strategy that you might want to consider utilizing. So anyways, as far as the setup, you can, the first battle is always the faction team. The last battle is always a tier 1 faction team. The final battle is always a tier 6 faction team, which is the mythic, which has 100% of stats. As I mentioned earlier, tier 1 has 50%, tier 2 has 60%, and it keeps going up and up and up until the final one of 100% of the leveling. As you can see, these are level 80, and you should be level 40 because 50%, and so on and so forth. It just keeps going upwards by 60, 70, 80, 90, and so forth. But anyways, you can actually see what each one of these have beforehand, so you can kind of plan out your path and how you want to do it, or if you feel like you'll be able to go and actually defeat them. You'll be able to see the team. Unfortunately, you will not be able to see the stats of the team, but you will be able to see the actual team composition itself to see if there's anything threatening. You also can't check to see what they do, though generally if you're a mid to late game player, you'll probably already know what all of these do, like barrier and mana gain, really anti-red, anti-monster, apothecary for cleanse and browns, and really high hit damage if it still has its armor. So you do kind of need some memory because you can't actually click on them to check. So there's some strategy in that too, I guess, but it tells you the rewards that you end up getting, all that. These are multiplied by whatever bonus you have. Whenever you go into a delve that is higher of the current level, you end up getting a 2 times bonus, which is really nice, 2 times treasure for each of these. But as far as the actual things that ends up giving for completing out the battle, you can see ends up giving a treasure multiplier. This will increase the loot in the final chest. It also ends up increasing the loot that you see right here. Whatever this loot is, it will end up getting multiplied by that, except for the trait stone. I don't think it actually multiplies the trait stone, if I'm not mistaken. But everything else, it ends up multiplying. Other than that, we have the chest upgrade here. This is a chance that it'll upgrade this chest right here, which will end up giving us a lot of bigger rewards on it. The main reward from this chest are those little shards, those purple shards. It also has a chance of giving legendary and mythic ingots. Those are the main rewards, so you can also get things like gold and glory, and I believe souls as well from these chests. This is various general resources that you would pretty much get anywhere. And other than that, it ends up doing an effect. These effects last for the rest of the dungeon. So you have to be mindful of these whenever you go and defeat them out. The higher the tier is, the more, the stronger the effect will generally be. Like you can see, this tier 2 one only ends up doing venomous, which isn't really that useful. It's just a poison. This one only gives the life drain thing, which whenever an enemy dies gives 4 life. As you can see here, this one at tier 4 ends up giving 8 armor to all future enemies, and some of them can be very, very strong as far as what they do. And generally the higher ones will have stronger effects that last throughout the entire dungeon. Other than that, as far as what order you should ever do them in, one really nice layout or thing about this layout of this specific faction is, for the most part, there are a few exceptions to this, but you'll want to go in multiplier order as far as what order you should do, assuming that you're a late game to mid game player that can easily defeat whatever is in the delve. You'll want to do it in order of whatever the highest tier is for these treasures. So 1.25, check this, see if it's 1.25 or higher, go in that order, and basically just go down that line, and you check these, see which one's higher, 1.2 and 1.2. Apparently we're going to have all the same, so it's not going to matter this time around, but generally you do want to check these as they can be a different multiplier. Like this could be a 1.2 on this rear one, this could actually be a 1.3 I've seen on this one, and this can, I believe, go up to 1.3 or even 1.4 occasionally as well. So do be mindful of whatever the treasure multiplier is, as it can sometimes manipulate which path you kind of want to go. So real quick, I'm going to go show a team for this. Currently I use Diviner, Divinia, Infernus, and Divine Ishbala. The best team that you can use without using the legend from this, if you want to go use pure faction, would end up being Gargoyle, Arcane Golem, another Gargoyle, and the Ethereal Sentry. And if you end up having the Legend from the faction, the absolute strongest team that you can build from this faction is the Legend in first slot, the Gargoyle, followed by the Arcane Golem, and another Gargoyle. So that's what you would end up running for this specific faction. And as far as actual teams, Divine or Divinia Infernus, Divine or Spala is the strongest I have personally found so far. Alternatives could be replacing out Infernus with Grapple Pot, and then replacing out Divine or Spala with some kind of other support troop, or even just keeping it if you still have Diviner plus Divinia. It's actually somewhat important to be using Divinia in first slot. Main reason being is the final battle of this delve. The only really strong thing that it has is it has an immune to silence whenever you end up hitting it with skulls. And, I mean, it has a silence that hits you every single time you hit it with skulls. So having immune to silence is very, very useful in that final fight, because you'll be able to be immune to that silence effect and still be able to accumulate your mana. So, very good to be using that. Do be mindful not to really be using stuns or other stats effects or teams that are really heavily dependent on various stats effects. The main reason being is there are a lot of various things that you'll end up getting throughout the delve that could give them immunity, like Thick Head, Impervious, and just other various stuff where you don't know what you're going to be up against. Or actually, technically you can before you draft. You will be able to scout out all the rooms, but the amount of time it would take to check that literally every single time is a little bit too time consuming to really bother with. So generally, do stick with a team that is not stats effect required. Obviously, we have Burn here. This particular team is not it's not specifically using the Burn. Like, we're not using Element Grim on our team or something like that where we actually need it. It's just a side effect of what we're doing. So do be mindful of that. Generally, it's better to have good on-team synergy than it is to have anti-team synergy. So, like, things like buffs, things like Divinia especially is insanely good if you can end up using it in a certain delve, just because it has so much support, has HP so you don't die, has barriers, has various stats effects that help you not die, and just is overall really, really strong for these kind of things. And apparently we have ourselves a pet. Let's see. Oh, that's actually one of the newer ones too. Thank you for reminding me, little pet guy. There are, I don't even have that pet yet. There are 5 new pets that ended up coming in with the patch as well. All of them are the pure color bonus thingies. Also, with the delve, you can X out of it at any point. You can save it for days. You can go do other battles. As you can see right here, we can go and just exit out of it completely and come back to it at a later time. But 5 new pets ended up coming into the game. This is one of those 5 new pets. They basically just added all of the mastery related ones. Earlier they only had the bunny, which was the blue one, for the extra plus 5 to 10 water mastery, but now they've added one for all 6 of the colors. So the other 5, this one obviously is the green one. So yeah, we ended up getting technically 7 new pets, so 5 that you can get normally by normal means, as in a pet gnome, as you can see right here. Just this is a normal one triggered by a pet gnome. There are 2 other ones that also came in. It's just the 2 related to the factions I end up showing. Once you get a really high renown, you'll end up getting a pet specifically for the faction bonus. But anyways, let's continue. As you can see, our multiplier is higher because of the thing. We end up getting a reward chest. There's a 100% chance on the first and last battle to get that reward chest. Generally, if you're at a newer level or lower level in the game and you're just trying to get these completed, or you don't have as much time on a given day, basically the strategy is do first battle, do second battle, do third battle, and you're done. Though, of course, if you have more time, you're going to want to go do all of the other battles too, as it gives you quite a bit more rewards. Even if you don't end up getting lucky, you're still getting a okay amount of resources per battle, since you're getting so much multiplier on top of the already base resources that you're getting. But anyways, we'll just go through every single one of these and just end up clearing all of these out. This faction's a lot easier to build teams around as well, which is something else I didn't really mention when I was mentioning all the better things with this faction. We have the restriction of brown and yellow. Do keep in mind, though, you can use literally any hero weapon color in the game. I don't know exactly why they have it like that, but it is the case. So it doesn't really matter what color your weapon is specifically. But as far as the actual troops, they all have to be either brown or yellow in them for this specific faction. And the other one is green and blue. So do be mindful of that with whatever teams you end up creating with that. Generally, mechanics that you'll want to be using are things like instant kill, things like devour, things like healers. If you feel like you're going to die a lot due to having low stats and stuff, also a good idea to bring summoners. As I mentioned, do keep in mind that doesn't count as you not dying. The second you have a single casualty, it does prevent you from getting those extra points for your faction renown. But as far as just clearing them out, it might help out a lot in just getting them completed. Because if you end up dying here, if we lose a single troop, we will have that permanently lost for the rest of the faction, unless we put another summon there. As you saw right there, we ended up triggering the 40% chance to get another chest, and now we got the chest upgrade. And now we'll basically just keep going around to the highest multipliers, and since it's pretty straightforward, we don't really need to go around too much. We just need to go do the 2 tier 4s and the 2 tier 3s and the 2 tier 2s. But again, do double check what they are, as they can be different sometimes. and you might want to double check what the effects are to make it slightly easier for you, and just all of that. One nice thing about taking the higher ones first as well is you're constantly getting higher stats on every single one of the following battles that you're doing. And if you're doing the stronger ones first, you're kind of not really ever having higher stats until the final battle. The main reason for this, of course, is the multiplier thing. These tier 4s that we're doing right now have 80% stats, but then when we move down to tier 7s, they only have, or tier 3s, they only have 70% stats, but we have higher stats on them because of all the extra effects that we end up having. So to a degree, they're about the same amount of stats the entire time, roughly around 80-ish% or so. Due to those factors. So doing it this way also technically makes your average battle a lot easier, because if we were to go and do it in reverse order, for example, and let's say we started with the tiers 2s and then the tier 3s, well, by the time we hit the tier 4s, they're almost going to be like 90% stats or 100% stats. Not because the actual stat percent is any different, like your level's still going to be the same, but they're going to be getting a lot more effects onto them. Like, for example, right now we currently have, never mind, no effect, but if you go under traits, they'll actually show all the effects. We'll be able to show that in a second once we actually get this one down. Currently they don't have any effects because they got 8 armor from the previous one, and it doesn't actually show you whatever extra bonus stats it ends up getting, unfortunately. It only shows the actual trait related effects that it ended up accumulating through the other delves that you end up doing. So I'll go show that in one moment once we finish out this battle. Do we not have alignment here? I guess we'll take a skull, and then any kind of damage we do, like an Infernus, we'll kill that out. But yeah, these initial ones are pretty easy for end game player, obviously. Not until later will they really get too difficult, and even then they probably won't be too difficult due to the fact that we constantly keep gaining higher stats off the factions from the treasure hoard. Okay, we didn't get a vault there, as you saw, or we didn't get a chest upgrade, but if we go into this battle now, and we go into the actual battle itself, we'll end up seeing right here. If you go check the traits, once they've finally gotten one from a certain room, it'll bring up all of the extra traits that they end up having here. So, of course, they have the standard 3, but they also have whatever ones they end up having from whatever other effects ended up triggering. So, for example, we'd also get another one saw there once we get this. Let's see. Like this one, all future enemies gain Tangle. That's really annoying. That basically entangles you and puts an entangle on you, so you can't do skull damage or gain attack. So, once we do that battle, every single following battle will end up having that, which will prevent us really from effectively doing skull spam, so we do have to be mindful of that too. You can use skull spam in these things if you want to. You just need to make sure you have a cleanse. Again, you need to make sure whatever team you use has really good self-sufficient synergy, in that whatever your effects are, they're more so support for your teams rather than anti-effects to the opposing team. Basically, you want buffs, you don't want stats effects, essentially. You want buffs for your teams and very minimal stats effects, because there are a lot of battles that won't be able to do anything to. Like, for example, we are using Burning right now, but 3 of his troops currently have immune to Burning. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a struggle on this one. Obviously, what we're using right now is not Burning specifically dependent, but it's mechanics like those. There's a lot of battles that are just really anti a certain mechanic, and almost every single delve ends up having at least one of those rooms where if you're using a certain mechanic, it's just going to get absolutely destroyed. One thing to really be careful with is, specifically in this actual faction, or this one, if you're using the pure team, like the Viper battle we just did is very, very common for whatever reason, but the actual faction team is really bad against it, because the faction team gains attack on several of its various attacks, and Viper, of course, does the charm, so it'll end up doing damage to you based on whatever attack you have. So you have to be very, very careful around that to make sure that it doesn't really hit you too hard. Otherwise, you might lose a troop, and then you lose some of your points. But we'll go through a... Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you think you're doing? Don't die. Always good to have barrier spam. Always good to have HP heal. Always good to have literally everything that can possibly make sure you do not die. Because you do not want to die. Okay, we'll go get that down. If we lose that, we end up losing some of our potential renown points. Not too big a deal. And we'll still probably be able to win even without it. But, of course, it is a lot harder, especially without a summoner. So, yeah, things like Divinia, things like summons, things like... Or, it's not summons. Well, summons can help. But things like Divinia, things like barriers, things like HP gains, armor gains even. Anything that can help make sure you do not die. As you can see right here, it was almost dead. Now it's at 130 or 125 HP now. And it's going to be pretty safe now. So we don't really need to worry about that much. Go get a kill there, go get the mana, go get an Infernus, go keep hitting him. And that should be a match as long as he doesn't revive, and even if he does, not much to really clean up. And good, he doesn't end up doing that revive, and down it goes. And everything else has like 200 something HP. So unfortunately the stats don't carry over. That's both a good thing and a bad thing. So your stats basically start from base value whenever the next battle starts. So obviously we don't get to keep all of our effects or HP or anything like that. But that's also good in the fact that if we were really damaged, we'd come back with all of our stats back. So you don't actually have to technically use a healer You could just go use pure damage that is so strong that you kill out the enemy team before they ever kill you. Though it is generally pretty nice just to have a backup plan for when things don't go as well, just to make sure that you do have a way to preserve your troop in some way, shape, or form. I'll go for that, get the Vinny up, in case we want to go and do some more healing. I don't think we're actually going to need it on this battle. He doesn't really have anything too intimidating other than that one hit, but that is not in kill range of anything, so we don't need to worry about that much. We'll go get another Diviner cast down. Diviner is so ridiculously strong. We end up getting magic buffs, we have enchants, we have so many things we end up using off this, and magic buff is really useful too when we end up getting like Infernus to higher damage, or something like Lavinia to higher damage. Really anything that's really magic dependent, anything that hits full AoE anything. This hits pretty much full AoE, even though it's technically not. This hits actual full AoE for heal on the team. And of course things like Grapple Pop, if you want to do the replacement, end up doing that too. Or really any yellow that ends up suiting your damage source there. As long as you have one. Also, alternatively, even though we're going down this route, due to the fact that you can use any hero mana in any faction, as far as like any weapon, one of the best strategies that you can do if you don't have too many things, which is actually what I'm rushing on my newer account currently, is you can go use Mang. Mang into Titan hero class is the strongest thing you can really use in any of these faction battles as far as hero is concerned. So if you're struggling to really build a team, building an entire team around a Mang Titan is probably going to be your best bet currently for really destroying every single one of these delves. So do consider that if you have any lack of options for any of them. You only need, I believe, 18 brown-red hero mastery to go get a Mang. You can get Titan as early as about level 25 as far as unlocking the kingdom and then doing out the kingdom. So it's really accessible to pretty much everyone as far as actually obtaining just a single Mang and then just putting 3 support troops to make sure it doesn't die onto your Mang, and kind of just go from there using Titan class. And just set yourself to barrier every single time you get brown, and either the explosion for extra mana once you reach level 70, or the enrage, so that you can actually kill everything basically in one shot. So far we haven't been getting more chest upgrades. Hopefully we will, so we can see some of the better loot that we can end up getting. But let's keep going through the rooms. These rooms, of course, are just going and weaker, so becoming pretty much easier and easier as we keep going down. They are getting more stats effects and stuff. But for the most part, since we are going into the weaker battles, those effects have very, very minimal actual anything onto our team. They're really ineffective, but we'll go cast this. Until the final battle do we really see those effects come into play for the most part, because at the final battle we'll end up seeing at the full maximum amount of levelage, and at that point we'll start to see like level discrepancy, and all the effects that we end up giving to it are going to start stacking up to be somewhat difficult. And again, if you ever are finding them difficult, just rush the end of the room, or just do a minimal amount of the actual rooms. Do the rooms that seem like they have easier effects while still having decent rewards and stuff like that. But we'll go explode this, get that going. Like, one of the effects we end up accumulating is summon a Leaf Storm when an enemy dies. Assuming that we're never going to die, which is pretty easy to assume since it's most likely not going to happen, we can assume that that effect is basically useless, since it can't really kill us or do much. Unless it gets a kill, it's not really going to do anything. And even once it does, a Green Storm really isn't that bad, especially since this particular team has Red Storm. So we even have Anti-Storm on this team. We'll go to that, get the cleanse, keep throwing down a bunch of various damage, clear it out, go get that up. Throw, I guess, the Divinia here, that'll get us more HP so we don't die, as well as the mana we need, and dead off the skull. And down it goes. And we just have the 2 weaker battles now, which will also still keep giving effects. And let's see. We can go technically check what the effects are and double check to see which one would be better, though both of them are so weak that it's really not going to make much of a difference. And as I mentioned, there is no tier 1 in this dungeon, unlike other delves out there. Or at least compared to the other previous delve. So you don't need to worry about dust level, which is really, really nice. The only tier 1 it has is the one that has to be the faction team. So it's really, really easy just to never need to deal with that mechanic, because there are various things that can end up shuffling up your team. One other one to actually look out for is on tier 4. Though generally you can win before it happens, but there is a bullet on it that has 2 bullets, actually, if I'm not mistaken, which can move your team. So always be mindful if there's any movement on the opposing team. It could be worth skipping if it's a really difficult delve, as well as just make sure to focus them down, because if you don't focus them down and they get a cast off, you have to wait until you until they cast 4 times until you cycle back to a point where your team is back to normal. That, or you just need to use a team that is fine in any location. One pretty nice thing about this team that we're using currently is it's pretty much okay in any positioning at all, because regardless of where Diviner is, it will never be blocked on any of its mana. So we're always going to be able to use it to feed into our mana on all the other 3 troops. So it doesn't really matter what order we are, we'd still go the strategy of get Diviner up and then go get everything up. The only slight issue that would have if we actually did get reordered on this team is we would not have immune to silence anymore for the final battle, but that's not really too big of an issue. You don't actually need to have immune to silence against it on first slot. It's just helpful to make sure you don't unknowingly get silenced. If you have a cleanse, like someone like Divinia, of course, we can easily just bypass that by using the cleanse to get rid of the silence if we really had to, which ends up working quite nicely. But yeah, do make sure you do the Hall of Guardians. If you already started the Eye, that's fine, especially if you didn't already get tier 5 or, 5-star Darkstone. It still could be worth considering it, but overall, even for newer players, this delve is just so much easier than the other one. It has better loot, it has better layout, like literally every factor, other than the fact that it has weaker delve troops, is nice about it. The delve team for this faction is a bit weaker, though everything else is also weaker as far as the actual battles, so to a degree, even though it's slightly weaker, it's not technically weaker, because everything else is also weaker, so even though the faction team itself is not as good of a synergy, it's still going to be good enough to clear through everything. But I'll go to that. Go get our Divinia down. And as you can see, I don't think I even mentioned them during this current video, but there are these new blocks as well. These occur in every single faction. Every single faction has a different layout. The other faction has these 4 in the middle. This one has it in like a alternating pattern on the 2 sides. Basically what these are is it just blocks mana. You can destroy them with explosions or any destroy mechanic and they will go away. Normally you don't really want to destroy them because it affects the enemy as much as it affects you, and you don't get any mana for them, obviously. You don't count as any mana, so whatever explode we do here that ends up hitting them, we got 0 mana for any of that, so not really too useful to go out of your way to destroy them unless you feel like they're really messing up your board with whatever team you're using. The only thing that they're slightly bad with is converting troops, because they get in the way of various conversions. But if you're not using a conversion team, then it doesn't normally matter as much. And since we have so much, even though we do have 2 conversions on this particular team we're using, we do have explosions, so we do have an easy way of disposing of them if they ever did become a issue. Anyways, we have this final battle. As Silent Sentinel, this is the legend from this faction. It's the one I've been talking about some. It has that inflict silence whenever it ends up, whenever you do skull damage to it. One way to avoid this, obviously, would be not take skulls. Though the other way, an easier way to avoid it, is make sure your first slot has immune to silence in any way, shape, or form. There are a few different traits that have this. If I'm not mistaken, it is Alert, Sky Ancestry, and Impervious, I believe, are the only 3 mechanics that have immune to silence, but there are several dozen troops that end up having that, and Diviner is one of the better ones that ends up having that mechanic. We got a Surge there, we're going to want to get that to full mana. Wish that would have exploded into full, apparently not. Need to go take a brown or something to go get that all the way. It's very, very close, doesn't look like we're going to be able to get it now though. Oh, I give you some red. Not too big a deal. His cast isn't too bad as long as we're not silenced, and well, he can't be silenced. He ends up enchanting his entire team if we do have a single silence on us, so got to be kind of mindful of that and get it off if we do end up getting the mechanic on us. But we'll go just do that. Get our nice little bit of explosion. Got our extra turn. This battle, as I mentioned a couple times already as well, it's a lot less impact. There's a lot... Oh! As I say that, he gets the kill. Well, there goes perfect score. But it's a lot... well, this is a bad time to say that, but it's a lot lower impact than what the other faction is, mainly because the other faction has skull spam, which generally is going to be very bad if it ends up connecting, and it also has things that automatically hit the lowest, though the AI got a little bit smarter today and decided it wanted to actually kill us finally. So this isn't too big a deal. It doesn't actually hurt our loot at all, as long as we eventually come back at a later time and make sure we go and do the faction without losing a single casualty, then we'll go get all the points that we missed this time around. So us actually losing that doesn't really matter as long as we complete this faction and don't die here. Though it looks like we're actually having a little bit of a bad time this time around. So we'll go get that. And make sure we pay attention a little bit more. Let's see. We'll go get a double yellow here. See if we can go get that rolling. Get the mana. I need to get these Divinias down because they are hurting us a lot. Got that Entangle too, so I can't even go for Skull Spam right now if I wanted to. I have to go for the Cleanse. Looks like we'll go for this Convert. We don't have that Entangle anymore, so we'll go start getting that rolling. Let's see. What else do we need here? I guess we'll throw in Infernus. I think... Oh, we gotta be careful too. He can silence us, and we don't have a way to really get rid of that. But as long as we don't connect with a Skull, we won't get silenced. Okay, so right there, I actually don't want to take that Skull because, again, we'll get silenced the second I do, and this no longer has immune anymore. Though I do want to kill it, so it might just be better value to kill it than to even let it live. But then we can't do Divinia. I don't know. We don't have enough explosion to kill us, so I think I will go for that. We do get silenced there. We're just going to have to kind of deal with the fact that we just got silenced. There's not really a workaround at the moment for that, so we'll go take a little bit of a Convert. Mainly just to get some skull damage there. We're already silenced. Doesn't matter if we keep taking skulls, not to mention only the main one had the immune or the silence thingy on it. But he'll go do another little thing. Doesn't really do anything. It only boosts its armor based on whatever attack it has, which is really big boost for the other guy. Oops, why did I not? Well, I guess it doesn't matter if we die now, because we already died on one. Once you've died on one, it doesn't really matter how many times you die out. So it doesn't matter that we got entangled, though. Oh no, but that should be enough damage, and down it goes. But unfortunately, we did have that one casualty there. It happens. The other two are definitely really tanky. But yeah, once we lose one, it doesn't really matter how much we lose as long as the delve goes down. And we got a tier 4 chest, and see what we end up getting from it. We end up getting a nice little variety of everything. You saw right there we get some souls. We got the higher renown. This you automatically get regardless, as long as you increase at all as far as the difficulty in it. This we got some legendary ingots for. We got some shards, barely any though. But it's mainly because we got 8 legendary ingots. It's so easy to get ingots now, particularly legendary and mythic ingots from just doing these factions. And we got a little bit of souls. Not that many for this late in the game, but still some souls nonetheless. And yeah, we can just go right back into the next level. As you can see here, go into 2 times. This battle is now saved for later, so if we wanted to go put our other battle into All-Seeing Eye and then end it for today, we'd be able to go and have those 2 battles and then do 5 battles tomorrow if we really wanted to. But or we could just do the 1 delay for this. But let's go do a portal real quick. 2 things that happened. We ended up getting some more renown. So as I mentioned with the faction renown, you end up getting all these rewards. And one of those that we end up getting is every single 10. You end up getting 2 shards. All those rewards end up going to your mail every single time. So just check your mail and you'll see we got our 4 shards right there. And now let's go open one of these portals. These portals can drop treasures. The specific portal that you'll want to open is based on what troops you want. Of course, if you want to go get Darkstone troops to go in order to get 5-star Darkstone, you'd want to go do the other one, or you can do it here. Basically, every single one of these troops that ends up falling from here ends up giving you a, they count as 2 types. As you saw there, it's counted as Hall of Guardians as well as White Helm. It has 2 kingdom types, which is kind of interesting. Instead of having 2 troop types, it has 2 kingdom types, but it counts as whatever the faction is, as well as the specific kingdom in the overworld, in Crystara. And of course, the All-Seeing Eye, as is mentioned, is Darkstone, and this faction is White Helm. And you can also end up getting treasure every single time you end up opening one of these. Treasure is used to upgrade your treasure hoard, and you can do various combinations of them to increase your percent. You can do up to 5 of them, or you can just use them one at a time. Generally, you do want to use in bulks. The smaller ones, you can kind of use one at a time if you want, just kind of scrap them away. The main ones that really matter are the higher 4 for the most part. And sometimes you could throw some rings into there too, but definitely want to try getting that quality up. Every single time you do these 2, you end up getting higher stats, as you can see off of this, and you can make sure to get those in order to not have, or in order to have the stats to make sure that you just don't get wiped by whatever might be around. But anyways, guys, that is pretty much everything with Delves. I will be covering this more in the future as far as more in-depth team videos and strategy and stuff like that. Probably, of course, we'll be going over specifically All-Seeing Eye on Tuesday next week, since it's the faction event. So it'd be a really good time to really go in-depth on specifically the other faction and all that. But yeah, if you guys still have any other questions about Delves or any of the new content that ended up coming in, feel free to leave it below. You definitely want to make sure you do these Delves initially, as they are pretty good value. They made Legendary and Mythic ingots so much more accessible than they were in the past, though unfortunately, it's one of the only really big rewards they end up getting from it. The only other thing that you kind of get from it that you'll always kind of need to do Delves for is the actual, of course, faction renown stuff, because from this there's going to be a lot of exclusive rewards that you can get, like extra stats, as well as eventually I think weapons and pets way down the line that are only going to be able to be obtained from very, very high faction renown. And of course it's 2,500 per faction maximum, and every single faction they add will just keep adding more and more and more to that, and they're planning on adding another one about every month or so. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Leave any other questions you have, and I'll see y'all later. Goodbye, everyone, and best of luck with Delves.